some weirdness on the side, but we'll let that go for now. All right. So in general, this is a little bit of a risky presentation to try to do it this way because of the fact that I'm actually doing live demos with this one. And you know how live demos go, right? The demo gods hit you and you have all these issues, right? But who cares, right? You got to live life a little bit. So let me just get this thing started here because I actually even go to the point of having, or I mirror my notes here. So let me just scan this really quick. Sweet.
So Korean, huh?
What?
Yeah. It's a Korean QR code.
That's right. It's Korean QR code. Exactly. So what is it? Control Shift. Go. Excellent. Okay. See if we've missed anything here. Oh, don't tell me my server's having issues now. Try this again. So why are you not liking? There we go. And actually, I'm going to redo our QR code one more time. This is again, just 1 second. It is a beta.
It's almost like they shipped a glass software update today and didn't tell anybody they were going to do it. And yeah, forced the update out. So
yeah, imagine that, which they did do, by the way. FYI. All right, we're going to move on from there because apparently this is not. This thing switch networks, or what did it do? We're on Wi-Fi. We're connected to the network, but it's not. I'm going to try this one more time, otherwise we're just going to go move on from there. We'll figure this out as we go. Yeah, they did, though. They literally shipped an update. Like, literally, I did the run-through on this presentation, and then literally they shipped it. All right, one more time, and if not, we'll just make this work without it. Totally Reveal is not liking... Oh, wait, did I shut down? No, we didn't. Well, the hell with it. Let's just move on for now. Okay. So normally when I give these, I actually also show my notes on this, but apparently we're having technical difficulties, but we'll make it through here. At any rate, some quick introductions. I'm Lance Gleason. Probably most people here already know that or kind of have seen me speak before, stuff like that. Very quickly, though, for those that haven't, I've got a small company called Polyglot Programming. We basically we specialize in Ruby, mobile application development, and data science types of consulting. We speak at conferences on a regular basis. I tend to do that a bit, user groups, things like this here. Through that, I've had a chance to actually make some great Ruby friends. Love this community. It's absolutely wonderful. And we solve hard problems, basically. But in all seriousness, you could say, yeah, we're whatever. It's more than just us solving hard problems, though, too. It's like, how many people here are actually consulting on their own right now? So we have a few. I mean, we're also always looking for the unicorn of a customer, right? Somebody's got a fun greenfield project, and they've got kind of some scoping and stuff like that. But, and we do that type of thing when we consult. But we also take on rescue projects, which is quite a bit of it usually. It's like we need it done yesterday because we initially just, had somebody do something and then it bombed or the developer left or whatever. So we do that as well. Kind of fun stuff like that. We also like cats. Imagine that, right? We pair program on a regular basis. So we do, yes, we also pair program, but we think it's important to include other species. So we pair program. We always let our dev pair drive because it's part of just, it's part of being a good pair programmer, as you will. We've also basically tried to go beyond that and tried canine coding along with pair programming. But as you can see, the motivation level, at least of our Shih Tzus, well, not that great. At any rate here, though, we're not here to talk about pair programming and canine coding and all that. We're here to talk about Glass. All right. So why? Why talk about Glass? Why is it important? Well, I mean, in essence, if you look at it, it's the new trend, so to speak. I mean, if you look at where things are going, we're heading towards wearables. I mean, that is kind of the direction that everything is going in. if you look at the evolution of applications, so this is an interesting thing, and I'm actually stealing this from, how many people here read Hacker News on a regular basis? Okay, so a decent number.
I've considered blocking it during the day.
Yeah. It can be distracting, well, and some people don't like the comment threads, you know how that goes. But they had an interesting piece where they were talking about kind of the state of the web and where it's going. And this slide really spoke to me. It was actually a couple weeks before I was putting this together. Because if you look at it here, we have like basically, if you look at, we started off with back like before mobile really taken hold, we had these big applications that did like all this stuff in them. And then the iPhone comes out, Android comes out, and we start getting applications that do less. They don't need to do as much. But then over time, what's happened here is then we've gotten into things like, you know, WhatsApp or Snapchat, where the apps are doing something very focused. But the thing is, that's really, we're starting to see apps that are even going beyond that, where they're going into things like, they're doing things like what Foursquare Swarm does, where instead of you having to take action with the application does things for you and brings information to you. Where, in a way, the application is kind of going into the background. And that really is sort of the crux of how you want to be designing, if you will, for a wearable device like Glass. So what is it? Now, how many people here have actually seen Glass before? So a decent number, okay. I mean, for those that haven't, it's an Android device. It basically, it's got the, you know, screen on here. You've got a bit of memory. Oh, sorry. You've got, and in essence, it's this wearable computer. Why do I like it? Well, I mean, it's unobtrusive. It allows me to get at information when normally it would be inconvenient to pull out my phone. I take more pictures with it. Now, I don't stalk people when I take pictures with it, but I do take more pictures with it because the best camera that to have is the one that's on you. My slide presentation thing is working. It's also great for speaker notes too. What it's not. Well, I mean, what Glass is not is it's not always on. I'm not filming you constantly. It's not a replacement for your phone. It's not meant to be a replacement for your phone. Annoyances with it. Now, we probably just kind of saw a nice precursor to some of the annoyances of Glass. It's buggy. The fact is, things just like kind of randomly fail on it for no reason. And that's kind of something where, even though they've technically now released this device to the public, I don't think it's fully ready for prime time yet because of the fact that, for example, we're getting random reboots still. There's a nice little issue that, in fact, Kurt just ran into, and I ran into it too in the past month, where you get into a human environment, and then the foil on the end will bubble up. Now, why that's an issue? So you have this display that's in the front of Glass here, and there's foil on the end of it. And the way that the display works is that it's sending an image out onto the mirror, bouncing back, and then bouncing back into your eye, which allows you to see it, kind of like an SLR. If that foil flakes off, which it does when this happens, you have a display which is useless. There is no way Google can be releasing this to the public in its current state. They're going to have to fix that.
Is that a hardware problem?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's definitely a hardware problem.
It's a material. They have now a full-time material science engineer working on this problem.
Yeah.
And it has been since December, and it's still not solved.
Yeah.
So it's hard.
Right. So it's basically, but that's one of the reasons why they're still charging $1,500 for it. But I think the next version is going to be really interesting to see what they do with it. Some other specs, you've got a bone-conducting speaker, 570 milliamp battery. Now, to put that in perspective, your phone has probably about a 3,000, depending on which phone you have. A 640 by 360 display, and what that basically translates to is roughly, it's like having a 25-inch television screen 8 feet in front of you. A gig of RAM, 16 gigs, 5 megapixel camera. Okay, but as a Rubyist, how do we develop software for this thing? Well, luckily, actually, in fact, if I'd been giving this talk, say, 8 months ago, there would only be one option available to you, and that would be using the Mirror API. So what is the Mirror API? Well, it's a server-based thing. It's one of Google's app services things. supports Ruby, and doesn't require you to have to write any Android to develop things for it, which is really pretty cool. So features that it has. What can you do with it? So I'm going to give you a demo in a second, and that part should work okay because that doesn't depend on crazy networking as much. When you're using Glass, the idea is that you have these things called cards that you flip through on it. So the idea is like I can wake it up like this, and I'm flipping through different messages and basically what they call a card on your timeline. For a lot of applications that are server-based, what are you doing? Well, you're pretty much going to want to, you might have something like HipChat, where if somebody sends you an app message, a card pops up and it tells you, hey, whatever, somebody just tried to send you something, you can read it and very quickly respond or not. That would be a great use for it. Anything where you need to push a little bit of information and it's server-side generated, that can work extremely well for it. So what are some of the other things you can do with it? Well, it does support contacts. Now, I'll be honest, I'm not sure really, unless you had a bunch of Glass users, if it's useful, because it's pretty much just for sharing, like, oh, look, I can share this timeline with another Glass user. Oh, wait, there aren't many Glass users around right now. But I guess in the future, maybe that'll be useful. Or maybe they'll just rev it out of the API for all that I know. Who knows what they're going to do with it. And it also supports location. So you could actually subscribe to somebody's location. So how many people here have actually ever used how many people here use the Google Maps thing where you can actually track your location history? Anybody here? A few. So it basically, the location functionality that's built into the Mirror API is basically the same as that. Where if you've ever looked at your location history, it's kind of weird where it seems like there's no rhyme or reason almost to when it's tracking your location or when it's not. If you look on the map and like, sometimes it'll be like I drove, it's like once every 10 miles it might do another ping in. Other times it might be just like boom, 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 boom. And that's about the same as how Glass seems to do the updates when you're working with the Mirror API. Okay, so let's try to do a demo now, and hopefully this part of the live demo will actually work okay. Give me just a second here while we bring this up. Now again, one of the problems with Glass, unfortunately, is that right now, unlike a lot of the Android applications and even the Wearables API that Google has, they don't have a simulator that you can use to demo apps with. So the only way that I can actually give a demo here is to actually mirror what I'm seeing with an app that they have for Glass. So I'm going to touch my display here. And this is what I'm currently seeing. And so, like with our timeline and things like that, for example, I can, like I was showing you before, I can basically go through and kind of scroll through my timeline. As I scroll through my timeline, you'll see these happen to be messages that came through, and these are what they call a card, which is part of the interface. Now, when I go back to the main thing here, now we're in the main kind of the OK Glass menu, and I'm giving it a voice command now, so it's actually going to wake up. I'm just going to shut that down and not actually start anything right now. But the idea is that when you're in that menu, those are apps that have been installed on the device. So if I'm clicking in here, these are various apps that have been created. It's everything from the Reveal one, which for whatever reason we're having a slight technical issue with right now, WearScript, Picture, so on and so forth with that. You swipe down and then you come back out. You can kind of come over like this and give it a chance for this to catch up because you can't always, there we go. It's my schedule. How long to get to home, right? Oops, I just shared where I live, right? We should probably edit that. No, just kidding, I don't care. Right? But different things like that. Okay, so first I'll kind of show you, this is a demo app that was done, and so Google put out like kind of a demo app for the Mirror API, and they've actually deprecated support for it, but recently I took that and forked it because it never was that great because they were using basically SQLite for the database with it. And let me explain why that's a bad thing. In the Mirror API, if you want to use, especially the location services, if you want to subscribe to that, it requires, so what it's doing in essence is it's using an OAuth 2 call-in to basically authentication mechanism to authenticate into Google's servers. Now, how many people here have used OAuth on some sort of project. Okay, so most people here are fairly familiar with what that's about. The callbacks to use these services have to be HTTPS with an actual, real honest-to-God certificate that's gone through a certificate authority. So what that means is, with their example that they had, they're using a SQLite database. So what are you going to do? You're going to have to stand up a server and then get a certificate just to test your app. But like most of us probably, for most of us, I think, if I'm going to do a small test app like that, I'm probably going to use Heroku. So I forked it, moved it over to Postgres, added in some active record to kind of make it a little bit more palatable. All right. So here it is, we're in here, and I'm actually going to bring up a new session here because that was actually an old one right there. So what happens is when we first go into the application, and let me just make that look a little bit better because that's going past our screen. Here, there we go. Okay, what it's going to do is it's first going to require us to basically authenticate into the system. And so I'm going to use, this happens to be the account that I've used to set up my Glass, so I'm going to use that. It's going to say, all right, you need to have offline access or whatever, so that's fine. You can also see where I live and what I eat and everything, and because Google's indexing everything in my brain too right now. I mean, that's just part of the. If you read the fine details down in there, that's what they're doing. No. All right, and now we have like an example timeline basically, and this is kind of their kitchen sink, and the idea is to wet your whistle with it without having to get too deep into the weeds because most of us here can start to read it, but it's just to show you it's not that difficult. Okay, so already when the application started, it's probably, what it does is it puts a brand new welcome to the Mirror API thing in here. So if we go back to the simulator now, and I wake up the device, go to my timeline, look at that. Oh, give it a minute. That's already been inserted in the timeline. All right, so watch this now. So let's go ahead and insert a picture into the timeline. Boom, there. So that's the card we've inserted in. And now if we go back to our handy-dandy simulator here, give it a minute, there we go. And yes, per programming does make my dev pair very tired. And what's cool about that, so basically, again, we're gonna, and you'll see the code in just a minute, but all this we're controlling server side, and yet we're bringing things in and out of the device. Now, likewise, we could decide later on we don't want to show that card anymore. We want to recall it. That's pretty easy to do, too. I'm going to hit delete. And if we go back over to our simulator now, the card's gone. Sorry, give it a minute. Bing, 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 bing. I always forget that I have to watch that thing because basically the mirror to catch up with the screencasting thing on the phone, it's a big... Google really needs to sort that out, but see, it's not there anymore. That's the point. Okay. So show me some code, right? That's what we want to see. All right. So one thing I didn't do is adjust this window so you can actually see it a little bit better. I made it nice and big. This is always the fun part when you're prepping these things. Okay. So in essence, the example, and you can see it there. There's a link to it off of... I did a blog post on it. You can find it there. You can find it under my GitHub repo. Basically, the example application, which provides a reasonable starting point, it's just a Sinatra app. That's all it is. And so this structure should look fairly, familiar to most people. If you look at our gem files, just to kind of see what we're including in this even, at this point, the only thing it's kind of that's slightly different is we're just including the Google API. Not that many gems. Actually, this even for development, I need to get rid of at some point. I just happened to notice that right before the presentation. I'm like, I'm not cleaning that up right now. Okay, and the idea is here, all right, so you come into it, it prepares a few things. You've got your, basically, and I'm just going to kind of quickly just scroll through some of this one here. You're bootstrapping a new user, which you're setting up, which is actually right here. In fact, when the application starts, that's why we're inserting this timeline item. There's your OAuth callback stuff right there. Nothing insane or anything like that, but basically that's what's trapping the call ahead of time. At some point, really, if this example wants to be, I think, a little bit more durable, we should probably use like one of the OAuth 2 gems or something like that. My big goal when I put this together was to get something that was working, that was easy to throw up on a server where people could play with it. That's your main call just into the application. But then this is basically, right here, this is all the code that you need to insert a timeline item. There's not a lot that's there. Now, there's a little bit here that's been abstracted away into another class that I'll show you in a minute. But I mean, in essence, what you're doing is you're just basically, you're grabbing an instance of the Mirror API and you're doing all of your, you've already authenticated in and all that and said who you are. And then you're basically just taking some text, putting it in there, and then if you have media, which in the case of the cat picture, that's what we had here, you're putting that in there, and then you're sending it through to go to the API, which is then basically throwing it onto your timeline. So the actual, a little bit deeper, and this stuff actually has a great opportunity to turn into a gem. There is one that's out there, but to be honest, it hadn't been maintained in a while, and so when I was getting, again, when we were just getting the demo working, said, well, let's just put the demo raw, but if somebody actually wants to start developing an application with this, which we haven't been using the Mirror API for a lot of our apps so far, but if you wanted to, you could do something like that with it. But the idea basically is you initialize it, and getting down the weeds, you're basically saying, okay, what's your application name? Give it your authorization parameters, tell it what the API version is here, and that doesn't look great because of the fact of our real estate here. I apologize about that. But, and then we get down here a little bit, and what's actually happening, if you're getting a little bit closer to the API, is we basically, you have to do this thing where you have to grab like a handle to their timeline and an insert method, see if it's a hash or not, transpose it if you need to, and then basically from there, upload content if you have something like like a picture or whatever else like that. At the end of the day, execute the method and grab the data back. Yes, it's a little bit more, but the point being, you don't have to wrestle with Java to do this. You don't have to wrestle with XML files. You basically can just program Ruby, learning a little bit of their DSL, even if you don't have a gem. And that's the big kind of takeaway from that, which I think it makes it a lot of fun and kind of powerful. Okay. Now, what if we want to go a little bit beyond, though? Okay, so we've done that now. We've played with, we've been able to take and use with Ruby, add timeline items, subscribe to location updates, and do all that, which is great. But now let's say we want to do something that doesn't require direct network connectivity, or that actually can utilize all these sensors, these really cool sensors that we have on the device. You can write native Android, and probably for production right now, that's your best bet still. But especially if you just want to prototype something to be like, will this work or not? There's a great tool, it's called WearScript. Now, it just so happens that we have one of the maintainers of WearScript right here, so if you have any deep questions of it, I know a bit, but Kurt knows a lot more because he's actually been one of the core contributors of it. But what WearScript is, in essence, is it's kind of like PhoneGap on steroids. It's the best way to think of it. PhoneGap allows you to write HTML and JavaScript and get at the sensors onto it on a device and create a fairly rich web experience or rich app experience with limitations. Now, WearScript is taken, I call it on steroids, but it's not at the same time because WearScript has taken a different approach where they actually, it's a cloud-based development environment, at least the way it currently stands, where you edit your files up in the cloud. It supports all these sensors, and I apologize that's not the best slide, but everything from beacons to the pupil to GPS to an accelerometer, all this stuff is supported out of the box with it. It natively supports finger gestures that you're used to as a glass user. You have everything from a long press, swipe down, tap, forward, all of that stuff is supported with it. Eye gestures. So beyond being able to tap and do different things like that, Glass also has a sensor that can sense what you're doing with your eye. So it can sense if you're blinking. It can sense if you're winking. It can actually also, I think they have another one that's, I know it's not in WearScript yet, but where they actually have something where they can tell if you're gazing up at something. So they just put a feature in recently on Glass where if you get a message that comes in, normally before you'd have to tilt your head up or tap the side of the unit to be able to see that message that just came in. Now you can calibrate the unit to just look up, and it senses you just looked up after the message came in, and so it flicks the display on and shows you whatever that new card was. Voice recognition, which would kind of go without saying to a certain degree. You'd want to be able to support voice recognition to be able to have another way to interact with the device, because it's not like you have a keyboard or something like that. QR codes. So we saw a demo of that earlier, even though unfortunately we were having network issues, but the point being that you actually have this ability to use, basically for it to integrate in QR codes, so you could read a QR code and then use that to get data back into the application. Okay, so let's do a demo of this. This is the one part that sucks. I've been so used to having my notes and they're not working. All right. So we're going to start here with basically I'm going to start you off with a WearScript kitchen sink, as it would be. So I guess we'll start by, I'll actually show you what the file looks like, which is basically all that this is. You see here, let me just make that a little bit bigger for everybody here. Oh, that's right.
Yeah. Where do you tap it?
Oh, hamburger on the top left.
Top left right there?
Hamburger.
Oh, hamburger. Ah, there we go.
You guys and your hamburgers. That's what's good about having the developer on the project, right? All right. So at any rate, this should look to you a lot like basically standard HTML, because it is. I mean, it's literally a WearScript document is an HTML document. It's built on top of the web view, which is in Android. You see here, we just basically standard head and everything. Here's a body. We're setting up a canvas object here. And then down here, what actually happens is we enter in through the main. We're grabbing a handle to our canvas, and then we're going into, via connect mechanism, our main server function here. And if you're kind of really interested in it, you can dig in a little bit deeper. But the general gist of it is, then we're going to do a couple of things. And I'll show you what it does, and then we can kind of walk through that a little bit. So let's go to our simulator for a minute here. OK, Glass. WearScript. It's going to take that a minute for it to catch up. It's a little slow. Okay, so I'm going to run this now. And what you're going to notice here now is there's a color up in my eye, which is also what you're seeing here. And as I move my head around, like so, the color of the screen is changing. Now there's a little bit more that's going on than just that, though. Because now if we bring the Hamburglar back, that's what I'm going to call those, the Hamburglars. I think that's a good name for them. All right, let's make this a little bit smaller so you can see it. In real time, this is streaming basically all the sensor data into the main set of servers here. So if you look at this here, whoa. And Kurt's over there laughing. He's probably like, I've seen this one how many times? And we're also, if you look at the logs here, right, we're sensing, so finger gestures and things like that. All that's coming back to our server. And we're even streaming. So normally I'm not taping you, but right now, this actually isn't being recorded, but yeah. But you can see the power there. Okay, so I'll shut that off so it doesn't get overly distracting. But look at the amount of code. This is basically right here. This is all the code that we had to write to gather all that sensor telemetry. All that we do is we turn on our main orientation sensor here and then set our fill style in our canvas object right here. We turn on our GPS, accelerometer, all that other data there, basically just by creating an array of sensors and then looping through them and turning them on here. And then we can capture these finger events via a callback, and in this case, we just happen to be logging them, but we could be doing something else more useful with this. Okay, well, so what would be a good useful application for that? Well, there are a number. I'll show you in a minute. I want to kind of show you this other demo just to show you kind of some of the other kind of just interesting things you can do with this out of the box. So I'm going to go back into Playground here. We're going to run this little guy here. This app just happens to be some various card layouts. So here's one with a list of different things. Going to buy some stuff. Give it a minute. There's Lincoln. There's, give it a minute, bunch of the presidents. I will be so happy when they have a simulator that you can use for these, but whatever. Now, what did it take to actually generate these? Here's your code right here. It's just HTML. There's your main card there with your article, your section. Look, probably should look pretty darn familiar to you if you've written any HTML, anything in a view layer. There's our first card that we had with Washington, right? And there's our one with the conglomeration of the presidents. So not that much work. And we've created a nicely formatted card, basically, that fits in with the entire set of glass styles and all that. Okay, well, that's great. What's a more useful app? Right. How many people here, so I happen to be using Reveal.js, which normally actually shows my presentation and works correctly and all that. But now I have no idea, given that we've had some networking issues with whatever with Reveal, but we're going to try this at any rate. How many people here have used Keynote for something? Okay, so we have a few. So the first prototype that I actually created of an app with this was using WearScript. It was actually for showing my speaker notes for a Keynote presentation. Now, Keynote is actually a little bit more challenging than integrating in with the Reveal.js because, in essence, you've got to somehow get a hook into the live presentation to be able to get data out of it, to determine, okay, give me the notes for this slide, the next slide, that kind of thing. There's a Python library. Now, yes, it's not Ruby, but there's a Python library called Cast that allows you to get at that. So I added a few hooks in and was able to actually make that work. And I used it about a month and a half ago when I was giving a talk at RubyConf Taiwan, where I actually had my entire notes and they were working correctly. And it's funny, where in Taiwan I had less technical difficulties than I did right down in Atlanta, but whatever. That's another whatever. So let's just try, we're going to try to fire this up and just see if this will actually work. Let me go over to my Cast thing here. So I'm going to just fire up the server. And then our IP address, I need to give this to the script because our current IP address is this right here. Because we are on the Georgia Tech network, or at least we hope we are. And I'm just going to bring that in to the application like so. Get that HTTP out of there because we don't need that. Okay. Script.
Oh, did I miss one? Let's see here.
Oh, yeah, we definitely do. Good catch, man. Good catch. Okay. And so I've started Cast in the background, and if all this works... Now, the other key thing with this is this only supports the older version of Keynote. The reason for that is because Apple took out some of the hooks in to be able to get notes and things like that out of Keynote via AppleScript in the most recent version. I don't know why they did that. Maybe they're going to make you write Swift or something like that instead. Right? Who knows? But at any rate, so let's give this a try and see what happens. I'm going to just start up into Playground and run this. Oh. Okay, so we're in the app now. And if it connects, that's a big if. Let me see if we actually are able to. All right, I'm going to do a quick test just to see if it's even catching things or not. Okay, survey says that this is definitely not, there is a network connectivity issue between this machine and my glass during this presentation. So we're just going to move on from that one. But if it actually worked.
Hey Lance, is there a notion that you're listening on 8,000, but your script says...
No.
No, because it's actually opening, there's another, there's a WebSocket on 4,000.
Network
Yeah,
allows
I don't think
here to here.
Well, it doesn't open all your ports.
Is that what it is? Yeah. So that's the one problem with doing those live demos on this one. It actually works better when I've been on 3G, which is what I've been using from other previous. So
Yeah, long story short,
doesn't care as much as Georgia Tech does about security.
yeah.
T-Mobile doesn't, which is good. Android doesn't care. Android's the way it should be because it's actually open, which is a good thing. Okay, so we'll just move on from that part of the demo then because that's just not going to work. All right. Now there's one other fun application though that we can do with WearScript too, which is another it's a fun live demo to do, so let's give that a try. This one I know will work. Bluetooth LE. How many people here have heard of iBeacons? Surprising, some people haven't. Okay. Well, for those that don't know what an iBeacon is, so an iBeacon is basically, it's a Bluetooth LE device. What does that mean? Bluetooth low energy. Bluetooth low energy, it allows you to do a lot of different things, but the idea being that you can create devices that don't use a lot of power to basically interact with other devices like your phone or something like that. And why is that important? Because you can't, and this is a perfect example, with a beacon, which this happens to be one which is a portable one, you don't want to be charging this device constantly. It would be very expensive to produce, and for a lot of applications it wouldn't be necessary. Now, we usually think of beacons, and the people that have heard of it probably have thought about that a lot with like having a location in the store, for example, where you have a beacon sitting somewhere, you have a bunch of beacons in the store. Depending on where you are, the app can triangulate, oh, I'm at this place in the store or there or something else like that. But you don't necessarily have to use a beacon always for that. This is a gimbal, so Series 10, they're $5, and it has a little button battery in it. If you sign up, if you've got a small company or whatever else like that, you can sign up as a developer and get 3 of them for free. And then turn down the power if you want to or not. And the point is, WearScript out of the box and Glass as well, kind of by association with that one, because WearScript is using Android libraries, actually has iBeacon support. So what I've done here is we've created this small little application, and I'll start up, let's bring over our simulator here. Okay, something's not... Ooh, I thought for a minute we'd actually crash the unit again. You all laugh, but it's very true that it happens on a regular basis. I'm really hoping we didn't lose network connectivity, but we'll see here.
Yeah, those are famous last words. I mean,
yeah, let me just check really quick. We've got Wi-Fi data. Okay, we're Wi-Fi data connected, which is good. We'll see. All right, if it doesn't work, I can always just blame Kurt, right? I could say that it was, no. No, he's put in a lot of good work on WearScript, by the way, too. So it's, let's try starting. I'm going to try starting this up again. Let me just bring back App Mirror here. Okay, bear with me here. This is all part of the fun of live demos, which we're going to try it again. I wonder if Georgia Tech has decided to ban me. It's definitely, yep, something has definitely gone awry.
what?
Refresh the playground page.
Do that? Okay.
Well, it's not Playground that's having the issue, though, actually. It's actually the...
Taking the blame here, let him just have it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's definitely... You know, the problem is the app is actually not coming up and saying connected.
Did you go to stop?
Yeah.
It's probably not... I'm guessing it's network. All right, we're going to give it one more try, and then we're just going to bag this. T-Mobile's connectivity is horrible in here. I've already tried that.
Try sharing the Wi-Fi from your laptop.
Oh, that
one.
Yeah.
Because this is running on the cloud.
Yeah,
Cloud
internet.
to AWS.
Yeah.
That's one of the problems when you're doing cloud live download. We'll just bag that demo for right now. There's a great demo that when it works, when we actually have network connectivity, which we bombed on a little bit, you can actually just run out of the room and it'll actually show like when you lose proximity and stuff like that. But let's just move on from there for now. Georgia Tech and your network. Again, I could at least have 3G when I gave a presentation in another country. No, we have to block it out of the building. We can't put repeaters in here. No. There we go. All right. So at any rate, the point is you can prototype apps. There's a lot of really cool stuff you can do with it. And when you have network connectivity, which is one of the limitations, unfortunately, of WearScript to start it up so it can run in the cloud, you can do really cool things really easily. And that's the point with it. Actually, what I could show you really quickly, though, at least, is if the demo was working, it doesn't take that much code to basically catch. Actually, did that reload out of here? To basically catch Bluetooth callback actions and to do things with them, including reading beacons. As you can see here, there's really not that much code. You just put a few callbacks in on a beacon method here, and then when something comes back, like it catches a range item, or it basically you enter a region or you exit a region, you can do something. And in this case, we actually have something where, like, show an escape cat, because you could put this on your cat, make sure your cat doesn't get out, right? Something else like that. And that's kind of the
idea behind it.
Sure, that's what inventors had.
Well, everything comes back to cats. Doesn't matter what you're doing, all right? It comes back to cats, cat pictures. That's what we do with the internet. That's why we use this technology. Okay, at any rate, let's finish up, though. Everybody's ready for beer soon. What about PhoneGap? Anybody here use PhoneGap? A few people? I'm still trying to figure out why. All right, we've done some sample apps with it on Glass. Honestly, I'm not sure that. On one hand, you could be more production ready writing JavaScript and HTML than you will be using WearScript, unfortunately, right now. However, you're going to miss some of the goodness of it because you're going to have to actually play with your manifest.xml file to get menus and things like that. So it's going to work like any type of a meaningful application on the device. And you're also not going to have, at least at this point, as much sensor support. But there's a bigger issue here, which is that if you think about it, PhoneGap has been, up to this point, designed primarily for mobile phones. Well, every mobile phone has a screen. It has a power button. It has a home button. Glass does not kind of have that. Glass really, you don't have a touch screen you can interact with. Yeah, it kind of has a small screen, but not one you're going to use the same way. And a lot of the usage characteristics are very different. I'm not sure what they're going to do with that. I'm not sure what would even make sense, because we don't have this huge amount of fragmentation yet with the wearables, because there aren't that many companies that are currently producing, at least the ones we're creating apps for. Yeah, there's like one other smart glass manufacturer out there, but you don't hear much about them. And you've got really smartwatches right now. You have Pebble, and then you have the Android Wear. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with it. Who knows? Rubato. How many people here have heard of Rubato? A few. For those that haven't, it's JRuby that runs on Android. Pretty darn cool, because you can actually just write straight Ruby and it'll run on it. I've actually gotten core working on the device. Few drawbacks, however. First of all, it's slow. That's the biggest thing. It takes about 10 seconds just to start it up. I have talked with the team, though, and they've said that there are probably some tricks that we could put in to speed that up. Might be worth looking into. It's on the radar projects that we have. Tough to say, but it certainly is a Ruby. It's something that would be kind of fun to play with. I was talking with Charles Nutter about a month and a half ago, and he was like going, that glass looks interesting, and especially using it for presentations might be enough for me to get one. And then he said it would be a good excuse to dust off work on Rubato. Because, I mean, there's a team maintaining it, but Charles hasn't been as involved with it or whatever. Maybe it's something, I don't know. Okay, and then Ruby Motion. How many people here know what Ruby Motion is? A few. It supports Android. Well, no, sorry. They just announced Android support. What does that mean? Theoretically, we should be able to support Glass. It's still in beta. It's not available right now. Which comes down to, in the future, Rubato and RubyMotion are going to be two real possibilities, I think, for Glass development. But if you want to create an application that's ready for production today, I would recommend probably, under which one, that you write native if it really needs to be production. Use WearScript if you want to basically prototype, and use the Mirror API if it's something that doesn't require getting it all that sensor information and it can be server-based. Right. So one other thing with all this. So it's kind of interesting. When I was looking at this talk, and I've noticed this trend actually in general when I've been out at some conferences, where you're beginning to hear that the web is kind of moving a little bit past just web development like we think of it, where the internet is more now than just web development. If you look at this, this is a recent chart of actually the number of users that we have of various devices worldwide. And there's an interesting thing here that started to happen, you notice, where mobile users are growing like this, but web is kind of starting to go more like this if you look at the trend line. What does that mean? Well, you know, or is that starting to say something to us? Well, I've talked to some people and they're like, well, because I firmly believe that I think that web development, the big growth that we've been used to with that, I think those days may be numbered, I think. There's still going to be a use for web development, but it's not going to be the high growth the way some of these other things like mobile are. Now, I've had some people say, well, I still use my web browser on my mobile, so what are you talking about? There's going to be plenty of work. It's just we're going to move it to the mobile browser. Not so sure about that. You look at the numbers here, right? Basically, year over year, the trend is that if you look at, this is a chart showing basically the amount of time, the percentage of time that people are spending in apps versus mobile web. It's kind of a trend there that's emerging.
Is that because they want to, or because anti-patterns are pushing people into crappy apps?
Well, think about it. Think about the trends that you're seeing with apps, though, too, where apps are becoming less obtrusive. Think about a device like this. Think about where you've got Google Glass on, and you're not going to surf the web with this device. The idea is that with wearables, you're augmenting what you're doing instead of having this immersive app that you're staring at, right, that you're doing this on. You're pushing the information to people instead of making them go out and get it. Different paradigm.
Wouldn't that be
That works better on mobile web.
What?
That's mobile web. That works better on mobile web.
What?
That would work better with mobile web, wouldn't it?
Not really, no. How are you going to push an app to, the idea, if you've got an app that's doing things in the background, right, and pushing things out, think about just how you use your phone, for example, right? Do you go to twitter.com in a browser, or do you use the Twitter app? Do you go to facebook.com, or do you go to the Facebook app?
Well, sure, but all of those things are still communicating with web services, aren't they?
Well, yeah, they are. But the point is, you're not developing applications anymore for a web browser. We're not doing web development anymore. We're doing development where we're communicating over the internet, but the medium is changing. And that's the point that I'm making with this. But good points, all of that. The Internet of Things. How many people here know, how many people here have heard of this term before, the Internet of Things? Okay, so a good number of people. Very quick review for people who haven't. The idea behind the Internet of Things is that we're getting now things like wearable devices, your Nest thermostat. Probably eventually we'll have things that are hooked up to all of our power outlets that are all producing data, be it when do you heat your house, when do you come home, what's your average speed on your commute going home, all this data basically that we're going to be collecting with it now. And so instead of centralizing it where everything was done on a computer and then it was done on a phone, it's going to be basically spread out over a bunch of smaller, dumber devices. And I think really for us as Rubyists, we're going to need to move beyond just web development. We're going to need to move into, instead of thinking about the web browser, we're going to need to be thinking about what applications can we create for Arduinos, what can we create for wearables, what can we create to actually process all that data on the back end. And very quick pitch, I actually started up a meetup group, and I don't know if anybody would be interested in this or not, but we'll see, and if we can get some momentum, that'd be cool. but basically one for the Internet of Things, where we can start playing with these technologies. Let's play with wearables. Let's play with, basically, be it data analysis algorithms. Let's play with Arduinos and things like that, and start getting our heads around this with kind of what does this mean, and kind of hack some things together and see what it's about. So check that out if you're interested, and that's it. Any questions? Yeah. Hey.
Yeah, could maybe you or Kurt address like where exactly things are running in the WearScript scenario? What runs where and how?
So
I'll let Kurt answer. Yeah, that's.
So I guess the simple. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The simple answer is Amazon Web Services, but basically what you see in your browser there, it pushes that JavaScript into a WebSocket up to the cloud server, which then routes it back down to your Glass on another WebSocket, and then it actually executes inside the Android web view running on Glass, and we inject some JavaScript to Java bridges into that web view to allow all those callbacks to happen. But yeah, and then passing the data back is over the same WebSockets through Amazon Web Services and back to your browser.
Okay, so basically binding into the sensors in the Android browser, and then for the most part doing the
Yes.
processing on the server.
Yes, and you can do the processing on the server and then push it back out via WebSockets to either your browser or any WebSocket client you feel like writing.
Cool. Any other? The Atlanta Internet of Things. Any other questions?
The question, but I'll just note that there's also, it's not directly related to Glass, but there is an augmented reality meetup in Atlanta as well.
Is there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, look it up. There was one last month.
Okay.
But yeah, there's actually an AR company in the ATDC downstairs. So.
Oh, sweet. Okay. That's always good. See, sometimes you learn things.
Do you see any redundancy happening in this Internet of Things? Like I'm saying, you have a bunch of devices, but what are their purpose really?
All right, so the question being is, do we see redundancy happening with the Internet of Things? And probably the best answer I could give is there could be. I mean, there definitely could be. But maybe not. I mean, I think it depends on... So the Internet of Things right now, and I'll be the first to say, it is a little bit of a buzzword. But then again, big data is too. We hear about big data, and that's a whole nother talk. I mean, if you... Yeah, I mean, in a way, yeah.
It's Web 3.0.
Yeah, Web 3.0, right. Well, so the idea with this is that what you could end up having, though, is that sometimes that redundancy may be good, because if you have like two devices, how do you know if one's malfunctioning? If you have redundancy, you might be able to say, this one has this wild reading, this one seems normal, the one may be off. Let's say that you had, for example, like one application could be that maybe eventually we take all of our sockets in our house and we're basically gathering, we're gathering data about how much juice we're drawing out of each one of them. Yes, technically that would be redundant if we also have a main unit on the outside of the house that's actually checking what's coming out of the power meter. But is it? Or could it be that we're figuring out that there may be some losses somewhere in the house? Maybe your house isn't grounded correctly. It depends on how you use it, I mean, I think is what it comes down to. And to be honest, we're still figuring that out, probably. Yep.
I was just going to say that I think the Internet of Things also comes down to, in a lot of ways, things becoming, I would say, more Star Trek, where you do your normal daily tasks, and the technology becomes a little bit less obtrusive and more helpful at the same time.
Exactly. And I mean, that's the point of Glass to a certain degree, too, where instead of me having to go to this phone and ask it for information, pull it out while I'm driving. Now, yes, there's controversy about using Glass while you drive. However, I found it to actually be very helpful, because if I just need to glance down at a quick message that I'm expecting to come in, and I'm heading down the road, which is less obtrusive? Me grabbing my phone and going, right, and looking at the message here, or just going tap and taking a quick glance up?
Some might say nothing.
Well, that's true too. You could say that a voicing or something else like that. And that could be another app idea that would even be less obtrusive to it. Actually, that would be less obtrusive than anything that you view. That's a good point. But
I don't know. I think sometimes talking to like your Siri can get pretty frustrating when it like doesn't understand you over and over, and you're like, ah! And then you get distracted while driving, talking to the computer.
Yes, very true. Oh, no.
Yeah, just how's the performance? Okay, how's the performance on glass? Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Loaded question, I guess. But first of all, what do you mean by performance?
I guess I need the microphone.
So on the presentation, we saw it lag. Was it lagging for you?
Now, the lag that you saw in the presentation was actually, the majority of what you were seeing in the presentation was because there's lag between, I have this tool that basically allows you to screencast what you have on a physical device here. And there's a bit of lag. So you have 2 bits of lag that you were seeing during the presentation. One is between my glass and doing a screencast here on this screen. And then you have another lag between what's on this screen and what's on my machine here. And actual use, like if I'm scrolling through the menu right now, it's pretty quick actually as far as that goes. And most apps seem to run fairly well. Now, Kurt's done a bit more on the WearScript side. Have you seen anything that's like made you say, oh, the performance really sucks? Or
the bigger problem is if you're doing anything at all complicated, is that it gets ridiculously hot.
Yeah.
And then it starts underclocking to try and keep itself from burning up, and eventually just shuts down.
Yeah.
So that.
Yeah, well, they need to, and they do need to rev the hardware too. Right now, the specs on this unit are equivalent to about a Galaxy Nexus, to give you an idea. And I'm guessing that probably before they release this, they're going to rev that hardware. I'm really hoping they do. I mean, for sure they're going to have to do the screen, but whatever with that. Yeah. Any other? All right. Cool.
This video has been sponsored by Rieta Incorporated. Learn more today at rietta.com.